Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Cloak Dagger as well as the latest episode of iZombie. Like always, if I'm talking about something that you want to listen to, you can always look in the description down below. I include a time when I start talking about each of the respective shows. So, for example, if you don't want to hear what I say about this week's episode of Cloak Dagger, you can skip to what I have to say about this week's episode of iZombie. But the first thing I'm going to talk about is this week's episode of Cloak and Dagger. Now let's break down some interesting things. Obviously, Ty and O'Reilly come across the scene of Tandy kicking those dudes' asses, before she ended up getting, trapped by Leah and everything. And obviously, Ty's kind of worried because for him it's like the reason why Tandy went at this alone was because him saying he was better off without her, and now he kind of regrets it because if something happens to her, he's internalizing. Because it's interesting because even O'Reilly's like, "Aren't you two like a package?" And he's like, "Well, that's sometimes packages are messed up. Essentially, they're a little broken upon delivery and stuff like that." And I thought that was kind of an interesting kind of analogy for kind of where they stand right now. And obviously, he's kind of, obviously he's desperate to find, Tandy and everything, kind of feeling like, yeah, something's wrong. He goes to visit Andre. Now that was interesting. It seems like Andre doesn't need much for him to kind of get his grasp on you. Because I think Ty was trying to touch his hand either to try and get a feel for him, because it's like, oh, I'll talk to Tandy. I don't really know someone who fits your description. He's just like, man, could you get me in contact with Leah so I can try and find Tandy? He's like, I don't think so, so. But the moment he touched Ty, I think maybe Ty thought if he can touch him, he can probably read his fears. Or maybe Ty was just, well, because Ty extended his hand first, so it seems like it was more like Ty was trying to read his fears, but obviously, it didn't work out for him because Andre ended up reading him. And just like you could tell Ty kind of felt a little different, but obviously Andre's because he's trying to make it so that Ty will stop caring. He's even flipping because he's, like I said, it's a thing of playing on your fears. It's like, here's these fears that you have, which is interesting considering the fact is that that's kind of like Ty's powers and stuff like that. But the fact is he's playing on Ty's insecurity of thinking Tandy doesn't care about him. And it's almost like, oh yeah, she's from this privileged background. She's able to kind of do whatever she wants to without feeling remorse. Which Ty's trying to be like, no, Tandy does feel remorse. She just bottles it all up, kind of saying you don't know us. The fact of the matter is we are the exception, not the rule, of their whole situation, because he's kind of trying, he's turning it into a black and white thing of a literal black and white thing of she can do so much that you would get locked up for, trying to be the fact is that she's not worth your time, because it's with her position, she's only going to keep you around as long as you're useful, and then she's going to abandon you. And I think, like I said, that's just an insecurity I think Ty does have, where he thinks maybe that's all he is, especially because of the recent thing of oh, that's all I am for you. I'm just here to play these roles and stuff like you. Or Tandy was like, no, it's not like that, But like I said, that was just because that was some fear of Ty's, and it kind of makes him kind of give up. Luckily, Mayhem was inside that place, so she kind of started playing certain things to make Ty realize, no, get him back in his spirits, because obviously, Andre's, trying to beat him down so he doesn't look for Tandy, because he's already trying to tell Tandy that she's alone. It's oh yeah, I already killed your boy Ty. She's no, that's just you messing with my head. It's no, in no shape or form is that the case, when then obviously it is him 100% messing with her head. It's kind of interesting, because it seems it's not necessarily the world bends around you the moment you play those records. I think it's just that sensation, those feelings that it invoked. Because the whole point is the way Andre kind of explains it. Basically, a record gets played, it basically brings a memory forth, and basically he takes that emotion, that feeling, and then he pushes it to the surface. And I think when Mayhem was playing those records, obviously the girls, the ballerinas, because obviously that's it makes him think of Tandy, and obviously that's something she cares about, and probably reminds him of the girl he met all those years ago on the beach, the ballet. So I think it kind of invoked that in him, and being oh yeah, that's that side of Tandy, And it was a reminder of Tandy. And it's it just happens oh wow, she's playing those girls. So it doesn't seem like his powers necessarily have that world of altering ability. I think it's just a coincidence. I think it's a situation of it hits you with a certain feeling and memory, and I think It just happened to be like, oh, your eyes are more aware of it. You're more aware of what's happening around you. Because the same thing with the sirens from the ambulances. It's just, oh, like, you know, Mayhem played another one, and it's like, oh yeah, he was hearing it. Like, I don't think it's like, oh, it just magically popped him up. It seems like it does, but I think it's just, it makes you more aware of something that you weren't there. It's like there's something on the tip of your tongue type of situation, but the moment the records kind of get played, it kind of makes you go, I remember, like, it's there. It's a full thought at the forefront of your head now. Rather than kind of being cloudy in the back of your head, it's fully there at the front of your mind being like, oh, this, you know? So I thought that was kind of interesting. All the while, like I said, there's a whole Tandy thing. It's kind of interesting in this weird, messed up way. You can almost see this interesting parallel between Tandy and Andre. Like, Andre's just kind of a selfish asshole. Like, all that he does to these people, to these girls, is just to help himself, because he's like, the fact of the matter is trying to be like, oh, this isn't me inflicting pain on them. I mean, some girls, and even Leah's case, is almost like, oh, he taught me that pain can be good. Like I say, it's this weird, obviously twisted, like, Stockholm Syndrome type of situation of like, oh man, like, it's like, no, I can't leave here because no one else cares about me. It's like the whole thing of making it feel like, oh, he's the only one that cares about you, no matter how bad things get. Because like the girl Dell was like, even the bad stuff, you start not feeling it after a while. It's just because for her, it's that thing of like, well, I have nothing else outside of it. He takes care of me no matter what happens. And it's like, how can I turn against him? He cares about me. He's the only one that does. And that's the whole point, to make you rely on them, that make it go like, no matter what terrible things they do, it's okay, like, because I'd be worse off if I have to, I'll just suck it up and take it. And that's the sad, twisted part of this situation. And even more, the worst situation is like about it, and the saddest thing is like Leah's kind of at the forefront of this, because when Andre's not around, Leah's kind of running things, basically pimping these girls out to people. And it's just like, because it makes you immediately think Leah had to have gone through that herself, but she worked her way up. Now she's the one kind of overshadowing things, because now Andre's like, oh, I don't have to worry about things. She's kind of broken in, so I don't have to worry about it. Oh, she'll look after my best interest type of situation. That's how I chalk it up. Maybe Leah didn't have to go through all this, but I feel like she did, just because she went through some shit in her past, and I think Andre kind of took advantage of that. So it's also interesting too, because he's talking to Evita's aunt, but she's giving him answers about certain things, but he doesn't fully get the answers he wants, so he kind of drags her into that world. But because she is the way she is, like, he's like, are you touched? And she's like, we're all touched in some shape or form, but she's like, the fact is, I am more aware than most people. So like, she has a gift on her own. It's not necessarily on the same level as like Tandy, Ty's, and his, but it's still a situation of, there's definitely, you know, something there. And I think it's so interesting, like, for her, because like she recognizes the symbol he's trying to remember, because the whole point is like, oh, I think you'll be able to help me because it's like Ty's memories led him to the Vita's aunt, like her knowing all about, you know, the Loa and everything. And it's like the Vave that he's seeing in his head, it's like she doesn't know what it means exactly, but she knows pieces of it. Obviously, part of it meaning bridge, another part of it being water, obviously it being representative of the fact that he tried to kill himself by, you know, jumping off a bridge. And so it's like, with this, you'll become a god. And, you know, and not only will he be free of his migraines and stuff, because that's, once again, his whole thing of like, oh yeah, he wants to share his pain with other people, because it's like, I'm going through this, and the only way that I can alleviate it is sharing it with other people, which is like, once again, just a garbage person thing to do. And just the garbage way he tries to justify it. But Evita's aunt is trying to tell him, like, oh, the fact of the matter is, if I were you, I wouldn't open that door. Because for him, it's like, oh, you want to become a god and everything? Look at what power you have and what you do with it. Like, all these records, kind of showing all these people you're trying to use your power to control and do this terrible shit to. It's like, look what you're doing with the power you have. You know, this is just you pretending to be a god. The moment you become a god, like, who's to say, like, what you would do, you know, with that. So what kind of god would you be when you're no longer having to pretend and everything? So it's interesting, though, because it seems like Evita's aunt is trying to, I guess, it's hard to say what happens, because obviously we see her kind of in, like, the real world kind of, like, pass out. So I guess, like, she's kind of stuck there potentially, or obviously it seems like more so like she's distracting him, because Mayhem goes in and she starts destroying all the records. So that was kind of interesting. because I guess that's so he doesn't have any power over anyone. Once again, I'm surprised what they're doing with Mayhem. She's actually kind of not she's going vigilante. She's kind of like an anti-hero in certain regards, just her approach to everything. But I thought she'd be straight up the main antagonist. But obviously, like I brought up before, it's like, nope, that's Andre. So that's interesting. I mean, granted, there's still some episodes left, so we'll kind of have to wait and see what ends up happening with Mayhem. But she's kind of helping fight this whole situation. I get the feeling probably when it's all said and done, O'Reilly and Mayhem will come together again, and Mayhem won't completely disappear. In what shape and form, I don't know. Maybe it's going to be a situation of she gets to continue being O'Reilly, but also have the benefits of being Mayhem, or maybe they become two different personalities living in the same body. So maybe like when she switches personalities, she ends up gaining her powers as Mayhem type of thing. Maybe not. Like I said, that's just me kind of throwing that out there now. We'll kind of have to wait down the road to kind of find out what happens when the two become whole again, like what that really means. But nevertheless, so like I said, I'm curious like whether she's still inside that kind of mind palace thing and she's just keeping, him distracted while she does that, or what exactly, I'm wondering, would that even necessarily work on Mayhem if you were to do that? Because her situation is a little different because, like, she's not a full person. She's only half of Bridget, so it makes you wonder, would that be a little different? But either way, so there's that. There's also the whole aspect of everything going down with Connors and Ty's mom. He kind of breaks everything down about how things are going, and for her it's like, I have to decide what I'm gonna do with you. There's part of me that's like, okay, the value you have could make it so that Ty never has to look over his shoulders for the rest of his life. But then there's the other side of things where it's like, if your value in that regard is outweighed by the fact that you killed my son and getting revenge for him outweighs that, then I'm just gonna straight up kill you. And it's like, I'm gonna sit here and I'm gonna cook and I'm gonna talk to you and you're gonna tell me everything. And he gives details like, oh, the fact is I found, they got some other body to kind of represent Billy's. Like, there's a lot of details that we still don't understand or know about those circumstances around how they covered up the crime and everything. It's like they got someone else's body. At least that's what he was saying. Later on, she kind of calls him out for lying about certain things, so I'm not 100% sure. Well, I think it's later on stuff in particular, but it is kind of interesting, like, because obviously for him, it's like at that time, all I cared about was helping myself, so I wasn't too concerned about, Billy and all that. For him, it's like, I was hoping my uncle would cover it up. I didn't care how he was going to go about it as long as he made it all go away, and his uncle did, and it's kind of interesting. And like I said, we still don't 100% know what it is that Ty's mom's been up to subsequently between seasons. Like I said, I've hinted at what I think it is, because obviously everything she's done has been for the purpose of, like, I'm trying to help Ty. I'm wondering, is the senator that she's referring to, that's his uncle or whatever, I wonder, is that the same person she's answering to currently to kind of get things to kind of side more certain ways so it can help out with Tyrone. That's what I'm assuming. That's what I've assumed up to this point in time. But it was interesting. Like, obviously, like, Ty's dad comes over and she argues with him because obviously for her, it's like, this is the way to kind of help everything. I'm sure he doesn't appreciate it because he thinks like, oh, like, he lied to Ty and everything. I think they have two different approaches about how they want to handle this. Like, I'm sure for him, he probably wants to straight up kill him. And also, it's like turning him in won't really do enough because it won't be enough to clear Ty's name. So, but for her, she thinks this is the right way to handle things. And in the long run, it seems like it is. Because obviously at first, it seemed like he was going to try and find a way to escape. But for her, it's like, when I'm looking at you, it makes me sick. It makes me angry because it's like, you're a reminder of the fact that we're trapped in this system. It's like, even under these circumstances where you're tied up, I have all the power. I still don't feel like I have the power. The fact of the matter is that thing of like you being white and being a cop, and the fact of the matter is your word has more weight and value. And the fact is my baby boys' lives were turned upside down. One of my boys is gone forever, and the other one is on the run. His life is forever changed. And she's just like, I want to at least bury my son. And that shifted everything in Connor's mind. Because for him, it's like, I think, after everything he's been through and seeing the pain she's in, realizing he caused all that pain, it's like Billy's buried in like a fairground. It's like at the time, that's all I could really think of at the time. And she's like, thank you. So I think that's going to sway her decision in certain regards, because I think for her, what she's ultimately seeking is trying to see is whether he is empathetic enough, whether he is sincere enough. And I think the fact is that he did that and said that. I think there's there's something there, that regret and that pain. Like I said, because there was a part of him that was trying to get like that knife or hook or whatever to like, it seemed like he was going to try and get himself free. And now, you know, whether he's going to continue that or not, whether it's just going to be like, no, I'm going to continue talking and let her hear what she needs to hear. Like, because realizing that it's not just Tyrone he needs to help out, he needs to help their entire family heal. He sees the damage and how much he's broken her, like, because of him killing Billy. I think for him it's realizing, like, it's not just Tyrone I got to make things up for, it's his entire family. I've got to heal them, you know, I've got to make things right. So give them justice, you know, in whatever shape or form that ends up being, you know. So I just thought that was kind of an interesting side of things. Although while this is happening, you know, Ty manages to track down, you know, where Tandy is. He got the ambulance. It's interesting because, like, obviously, like, there's a whole conversation of trying to make it seem like, oh, Tandy has no one. It's like, because Tandy kind of pushed everyone away, her mom, Ty, and now it's like, I was like, no one's going to come looking for you. You're all alone. How are you going to be rescued when no one, you know, cares enough to come looking for you? And I think there's some part of Tandy that starts believing it. She tries to get away, but the girl that's with her, Dell, ends up selling her out. And I think it's just, like I said, it's that thing of like, they feel like they don't have any worth, that this is the only place that they have worth. And it's like, no matter what's happened, like, this is the only place we have. Like, there was that whole conversation I thought was kind of neat too about, like, it's like, because Dale is under the impression, it's like, they told us they killed those girls that were supposed to be here, but Tandy's like, no, I helped rescue them. I was there. And it's like, how could you do that by yourself? She's like, I wasn't by myself. I had the best friend a girl could ask for. And it's like, you know. And, you know, and it's like, oh, they're lying to you. The fact of the matter is they're trying to keep you complacent and afraid. Like, they won't hurt you because they didn't kill those other girls. But they're saying that just to scare you into staying. And even Dell finds out, she looks up the stuff and is like, oh, those girls were rescued. And she finds out, it's like, no, my mom didn't abandon me. She loves me. She's still putting up, like, posters and on chat rooms looking for me. There are people out there. My family does care about me, is what, you know, happens. And I thought that was pretty neat. Like, because the thing is, Tandy's powers aren't working because she's hopeless right now, which is always an interesting thing that, you know, once again, Tandy, especially where she started at the beginning of the series, you would have never thought she'd be the hopeful person that she is. Like, I guess that was supposed to be almost ironic, the way that their powers are the way they are. But, you know, in Tandy's case, like, you know, some terrible shit was about to happen. But luckily, I think Dale getting hope sparked hope inside of Tandy. And it's like, because Tandy told her that, you know, no matter what ends up happening, as long as you have hope, there's a way. And I think that was enough to kind of I don't know whether maybe it's a combination of all those records being smashed, but also hearing that. Like, I think as long as there was kind of hope in the air, that place, because it's like, this place isn't some like fortress, it's just a motel. If we just wanted to leave, we could. You know, it's like the only thing keeping us here is the hopelessness. But like in that moment, Tandy got her powers back. They activated, and she starts. I love what she did. She sliced into the wall, broke through it, grabbed Lee, and dragged her back in. And it's like, yo, I'm going to clean up. And Ty's doing the same thing. I love Ty fighting that big dude. He's hitting him, bam, 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 but the dude's still coming at him and everything. I love what he kind of grabs Ty's leg, throws him. Ty teleports back to the dude, and Superman punches him. I'm like, fuck, yeah. And Tandy's kind of slicing through. I love her, like, throwing multiple daggers at the wall and then, like, smashing through it. But lo and behold, like, her and Ty find their way to each other. And just, like, you could tell they're so happy to see each other. And it's just like, you know, because especially after what Tandy saw, I think there was some part of her that was actually scared. Like, maybe there's some truth to it. Maybe Ty is gone, but to see him alive and everything. But we see Ty passing out at the end, and the darkness, his powers are just like oozing from him. I think it's because he pushed himself so hard. He was like teleporting back to back to back. He was doing big jumps because he was desperate to fight Tandy. It's like, I need to do this. I guess when he drew that large symbol, it's like it took him where he needed to be, and it just expanded his powers to give him the push needed to keep doing this over and over again. And I guess pushing his powers to the limits like that, it's making, I guess, that world that, you know, kind of that it's inside of that darkness bleed out. So I think we're going to be seeing potentially Mayhem maybe find her way out on her own. To be fair, it's supposed to be impossible without someone else there to help you in that regard, because she isn't complete, so there's no way for her to do that. But she might end up breaking the rules and managing to find a way out on her own. What it seems like at the end, though, is Ty, when he passes out, he ends up teleporting him and Tandy to the church. They're not at the hotel anymore, but they wrecked enough shop that I think the girls can manage to get away. Like maybe they can call, Bridget to get there to help and everything. But like I said, Ty's darkness is spreading. It almost looks like, it's hard to say whether he 100% was disappearing into it, but you can see it, just like I said, it's just oozing out of him and covering the entire floor of the church. It's like, whoa, what does that mean exactly? We'll ultimately have to wait to see what the next episode has in store, but I'm very interested to see where all of this is going to take us. Ultimately, what is Ty's mom going to do about Connors? What about Andre? What about Leah? What about this whole operation that they're building? What about Evita's aunt? So many questions. I'm curious to see what ends up happening. And now moving on to this week's episode of iZombie, a great episode. There's actually a lot of interesting things that went down in this episode, so let's break it down. First and foremost, I like the interesting twist where it's kind of like the build up at the end of last week's episode. It's like, oh, this is Lisa's stuff. It's like, oh my gosh, she's dead. Her boyfriend's losing it, and it's like, oh, she walks out the woods. I'm like, oh, because I was wondering if it was a thing of like, oh, did she get turned into a zombie and not necessarily ripped apart? But to be fair, the way the video is, it's like, of course, that's kind of not the case. But still, that's just where my mind was last week. So I was like, oh, so she come out in the woods, a zombie, and it's like, there's some other dude there, and it's like, oh, she was cheating on you. And it's like, okay, so she's not the person we're looking for. So that's interesting. So I just thought it was kind of interesting because it's like, oh man, they're building up to this, and it's like, nope, not her. It's actually kind of interesting because they eventually work their way through everyone on the list, and it turns out none of them are their victim. The victim's still alive, which that in itself is just a very interesting turn of events because it actually turns out there was actually no victim. I'm like, that's so good. Like, basically, the whole thing was a hoax to stir up, like, the bad blood between zombies and humans. Like, I figured there was something fishy with that situation. I just didn't expect that. And it turns out, obviously, Dolly and her people, which I guess, like, she's kind of the leader of the Dead Enders. I wonder, has she always been? Is she someone who recently rose up to take the position? Is she just one of many voices that's kind of like, oh, because it seems like she's the main one kind of controlling the operations and stuff like that. But the question then becomes like, is it just her? Or there are other leaders? It seems like she's kind of like, it's kind of interesting, and I think that might be the parallel they're setting up, where you have Liv. Well, because it's like I say, it's like a three-way situation, because you have Liv kind of in the middle, being on the side of both humans and zombies. But then you can, to a certain extent, you can be like she's more pro-zombie to a certain extent. But obviously she's very pro-human because she wants to help humans live from their terminal illnesses and whatnot. And so she makes them zombies. So there's that. But obviously you have Major kind of representing the zombies, trying to keep them in line. And Dolly's like fighting for humans, starting war with, the zombies. And that dynamic is such an interesting thing just because of that aspect. Because it's like, everyone at Fillmore Graves, you can tell, even amongst the people who are kind of like the high-ranking officers that, Major talks to, it's like, everyone's kind of split. There are people who agree with the way, Major runs things. It's like, no, we need to be a pillar of the community. We can't be starting stuff with people. We don't need to see us as monsters. But others, it's like, that's the only way they're going to respond to us. The people we lost at that checkpoint and everything. And, that dude was like, do you even know who they are? And it's like, yes. He's like, I know exactly who they are. It's not like, like they're just nameless faces to him. It's like the fact is he knows who they are, So every death matters to Major. It's not like, they're faceless soldiers or something. Oh, they knew what they were signing up for. It's like, no, this is a shitty situation. And Major's kind of stuck in that shitty situation. But the fact is, like, for him, it's like only 10% of the human population actually wants war with zombies. The others are great, so how can we demonize humans to that extent? Because the fact of the matter is, if we start stuff with humans, there's 500,000 of them, there's only 10,000 of us. And the fact of the matter is, this city will implode if we do not, be smart about this whole situation. And it's just kind of, it's a tough and interesting situation, because even, he goes home and Liv is cooking for him. She gets him some guru brains, but he decides not to eat it. He only eats brains from the tubes because it's like, I need to have all my faculties. I cannot currently be in a position where it's like, I'm not me for any moment of time. I need to be on top of this, because if I falter, everything goes to shit, essentially. But I thought it was kind of nice because him and Liv are kind of laughing and stuff like that, where he's like, at work, he kind of has to pretend to be RoboCop when in actuality he's C-3PO. But he's like, well, the fact of the matter is, I can take, because Robbie reminds me that C-3PO is God to the Ewoks. So I'm fine with that. But, you know, it's also good to see that him and Liv are on good terms. Like, because the way season 4 ended, I wasn't really sure where they stand. And that's why I was kind of like, oh, she's cooking him dinner and everything. Like, oh, I thought that was her just kind of pretending. But, like, to be fair, some time has happened. And so, you know, like I said, she had even admitted it in season 4's finale, being like, she understood who, you know, Major is, even if he had forgotten who he was, you know? So, obviously, that Levon thing still weighs heavy. But I think it's really hard to say. Maybe there's still something there, but it's kind of nice. And I'm like, oh, you know, and I think, you know, Major appreciated like what she was trying to do for him and everything. And I thought that was kind of a little nice touching moment between them. Obviously, there's the attack at the warm bodies, where there's that whole situation of Liv being there. She wants to try and help and everything, but they won't because obviously they know who she is. It's like, oh, you're Renegade. Kind of the problem of not only being a zombie, but a zombie celebrity. So it's kind of like, well, kind of freedom fighter in a sense. So it's kind of like hard in that regard of handle things as well. And it's just, it's sad. Like, Liv is just trying to help. It's like, I won't scratch you, just let me help. And then it's, you know, Major's there, and they're like, oh, so what are you going to do? How are you going to cover this up? And it's like, you're acting like Major's going to try and do that, because they just have, once again, it's that whole thing of like, oh, zombies looking after zombies and stuff like that. Initially, I'll admit it, I thought they were I thought Dolly set that whole thing in motion. I thought like, okay, this is like an orchestrated attack trying to get like both the humans and the zombies riled up, which I thought that was kind of the whole point. I guess like Dolly wouldn't really need to rile them up. Maybe she does, because if she riles up zombies, then it's like, oh, they're going to make some mistakes, and that's going to heat up humans anymore, and to the point it's like humans and zombies end up going to war. So you could see that point. So that's why I thought the warm bodies like place being attacked was kind of that. Which I wondered, I mean, obviously it's supposed to be a human thing, but do you think that's kind of supposed to be like a wink and a nod towards the actual the zombie movie Warm Bodies? Well, I think that's also based on a novel too, but still, it just makes me wonder, is that supposed, like, you get what it represents, because it's like, oh, humans and warm bodies and stuff like that, but it's just kind of interesting because there is zombie material called Warm Bodies. So, like I said, that's probably me reading too much into it, but still, nevertheless. But like I said, I thought that it was like an orchestrated attack in that regard, because obviously we know she's willing to sacrifice human lives, but I guess it's more so, I mean, because if it's for the greater good, I guess she's going to let every human make the choice. She's not going to make the choice for them. It's like, oh, if you want to make that sacrifice, I'll talk you into it, but it has to kind of ultimately be your decision. So anything going down there, she wouldn't orchestrate that unless she had everyone's okay with it. Either way. So there's that. There's the fact of the matter is, you know, like I said, the continuing, like, people being like, they don't like the way Major's handling things at Fillmore Graves, and lo and behold, they get attacked, and Jordan ends up getting killed because of it, which obviously, like, hits Major hard, because it's like, you know, that's so heartbreaking too, especially like everything they went through last season. I'm blanking on home dude's name last season, who Major ended up taking him and Jordan in at the same time, and ended up losing him last season, and now losing Jordan. It's like, because she was someone he took on his wing personally, and, you know, obviously some of the recruit, like, obviously, like, oh, what's Lily White going to do? Like, Major kind of having to keep himself together. He's in the locker room alone, like, he's about to break down, just because it's like, this is someone he cares about, because it's probably a reminder too of like, anyone he cares about could find themselves on the end of this situation, you know, even like whether it be Liv or Ravi. I mean, Ravi's kind of lucky in that situation, like, he only kind of goes full zombie like once a month, but he still has those cravings and stuff like that. So, but he can hide it well enough. But Liv's situation, it's like, I think it's a reminder that, like, the people he cares about most aren't safe, and especially because he lost someone he cared about like that. And obviously, you know, the others are kind of talking shit and everything, and it's like, you know, Major had to step out and be like, okay, you want to say that, but what were you doing when Jordan got shot? Where were you hiding? Because if this situation it shows itself properly, you know, Jordan died saving your sergeant while you were hiding. It's like, kind of, I appreciate that, because Major being like, the fact is, like, she died so that more of us wouldn't have to die. So don't you, like, kind of besmirch, like, understand the sacrifice she made for all of us, you know? And obviously it's like, oh, when you find the people responsible for this, what are you going to do to them? And that's the whole thing. Like, Major's kind of caught between a rock and a hard place with this whole situation. I do appreciate Liv being guru mode. It's kind of interesting, because this is one of those cases, I'm trying to remember if that's ever come up before. Let me know in the comments down below if it has, the whole case of, like, her being on a brain that has nothing to do with the case. I think that's come up before. Maybe no, because like most times, I mean, to be fair, it's like running low on kind of bodies at the morgue and stuff like that, sure. But it's just that situation of like, I thought that was kind of fascinating because it's like, I feel like that doesn't come up that often. The most braids she typically ends up being on are usually related to the case. Her being in a guru brain is just because like, well, Major didn't eat him, so they don't go to waste. I'll eat him, so. But I love her being in guru mode, just being like, oh, she's like using that crunch stain for her hands, and Clive is like, could you stop that? It's distracting. And she's like, oh yeah, these are distracting. She's like, I can't help it. Gotta let them breathe. And it's just like her stretching and stuff like that. Her even giving Ravi some advice when it comes to like, it's like, oh, Peyton's underwhelmed, in the sack, and he's like, wait, what did she say something? I love that. I love that literally while they're in the middle doing their thing and everything, like she's bringing up the current situation and everything, kind of ruins the moment a little bit. So I thought that was kind of pretty neat. It's just kind of like, yeah, things are getting hot and heavy. Yeah, it's sexy. And then that sexy mood kind of turns into a whole, we should do something about boosting the propaganda, like kind of putting a more positive spin on zombies. Because people outside of, will look at it as like, oh yeah, zombies just go around scratching and eating people. They rip people limb to limb type of situation. It's like, it's not necessarily like that, Obviously, you have your more hardcore evil people doing that. But still, you get the point. So I just thought that was kind of neat. And I love, once again, it's the gift that keeps on giving. Clive, Jimmy, and Steve, and Ravi are playing D&D. And I love the fact is Clive's kind of getting upset. It's like, oh, we're not doing anything. Like, let's get to some stuff. Okay, we've done enough of this aspect of it. Let me get my damn sword out and just do some shit. I love Clive getting impatient and stuff like that. I also love Steve being like, yeah, his cousin thinks him becoming a zombie was just him trying to get attention. It's like, well, you became a vampire for a girl, didn't you? It's like, and it turns out like Jimmy's part of like a sketch comedy crew that like, oh yeah, we do this whole sketch about like, oh yeah, people who live next door to a zombie and stuff like that. And I love it. I love the situation of like, and Clive kind of being like, oh, so you guys wear, because he's like, oh, we wear white wigs and we put on makeup to look like zombies. And Clive is like, so you run around kind of appropriating another culture, and him and Robbie kind of fist bumping. It's like, Jimmy's like, oh, wow, I never thought about that. I'm like, that is kind of interesting because you are appropriating another group. That was just an interesting take on that situation. But obviously, it's like, because, Peyton's trying to find a way to fund a new means of, like, putting something out there to kind of put a more positive spin. There's only 2 city council members left because the other 5 got up before the wall went up. And so they have a difference of opinion, which is kind of interesting that it is literally split like that. One of them is a zombie, one of them is a human, because, of course. Which I guess it works that way because it keeps everything balanced. But now Peyton has to be in that position where she's trying to talk to both of them and get the funding necessary to do this, but it's not in the budget. Like, both of them kind of want the same thing, yet kind of on the opposite side. They both want the same thing, but on the opposite sides of the spectrum. Obviously, he's kind of from the human perspective, and the other is from the zombie perspective. So I just thought that was kind of fascinating. And you have Ravi bringing the sketch idea to Peyton. Basically, it's like, rather we could upload it on YouTube, have it go, well, not necessarily YouTube, but obviously we can put it online and it can go viral, and it's called iZombie. I like that idea because you know what that initially makes in my head go, like, either it's going to get changed later on to iZombie, because I think that's going to be like the fourth wall breaking thing that they kind of do. I think that might be even kind of potentially tying into how the series ends, like the actual show, is that basically iZombie will be like her like Liv's diary or something, or like her memoir, her autobiography will be like basically her, well, not autobiography, yes, I'm confusing that in my head. Yes, autobiography of like, her life, and that's going to be it. Or maybe she's going to turn it into a TV show, even going further with the fourth wall breaking. I think that'd be pretty interesting. Maybe that won't necessarily be the case, but I think that'd be kind of fascinating if they went down that route, because I think they're going to circle around and kind of understand why the show is called iZombie. I think that's going to either be like the name of the show when it's all said and done, or it's because maybe the next door neighbor will kind of favor Liv. Maybe it'll kind of be her story and stuff like that. Maybe, I don't know. But I think that's kind of how they're potentially going to wrap this up. That's currently what my mind is on that, but that could not be the case, but we'll see. We do find out, though, I'm all over the place, so I do apologize, but the whole warm body situation, it was two of the people that Lily had, well, it's Lily White, but still, Major had dealt with, and when he was telling them off, it's basically them being trying to like, oh, like Chase Graves is our commander, and it's the whole thing of like, because I think it's because for them it's like that was their way of kind of getting back at, well, because Major wasn't doing anything. It's like, oh, so we're going to do something. Oh, we're going to shoot. Yes, they don't agree with you. They don't like you. The fact of the matter is, what are you going to do in this situation? You know. I also love, you know, well, there's a lot. I'm all over the place, so I'm stammering myself. What I was about to say is I love, like, when they were obviously finding out that the crime that went viral about that quote-unquote murder was fake. I love Robbie's literally just he licks up the blood, and Clive's like, oh my god, I'm gonna puke. But it's like, oh, it's corn syrup, so. But getting back to it, because Major is the one that suggested all of this. It's like, we fight fake news with fake news. Because for him, it's like, I am trying to keep as much peace as possible. And the fact of the matter is, it's like, but everyone else in the room is like, okay, all we have to do is go public with the truth. In particular, Liv is like that. It's like, all we have to do is tell the truth. We have that on our side. But for him, it's like, no one's going to accept that without any little meat, because it's like, they're just going to assume we're lying anyway. Especially when you have people like Dolly kind of continuing that propaganda, because it's like, oh, how many people were killed at Warm Bodies? She's like, oh, it's 4. It's like, no, there was 3 people injured, but only 1 killed. But it's like, oh no, you think the news is going to tell you the truth and everything? It's like, oh, those zombies, they're lying, they're covering things up, like spreading propaganda like that. And so it turns into a situation of like, it wouldn't hold the weight that everyone would want them to. But like Liv is like, no, the truth should matter. Should we really be fighting fake news with fake news? And for Major, it's like, I want to live in your world where everything can work, where the truth is all that matters. But you know, for him, it's like, it's not that case. So they orchestrate things. They get people pretending to be the people who committed this crime, like dead enders, who are like, yeah, they need to lock them up, but obviously get them out of Seattle, because if they don't get them out of Seattle, that's going to ask a lot of questions. There's also probably going to be zombies that get pissed off and try and hurt them. But it turns out it's just people that wanted to leave Seattle anyway. So it's like, this is kind of a benefit for them. It's like, they were all too happy to take this position, you know, because like, who are you going to get to take the fall? Obviously, Major also fakes, like, the 2 people being behind the warm body situation, fakes their deaths, puts them on ice, because it's like, I could easily go back to actually killing you guys, like, you know, things were before with Chase, like making a public thing. But it's like, I'm not actually going to do that. I'm not Chase. We're going to handle things our own way. Like, I'm not going to kill you as punishment. You know, it's like, you're just going to be put on ice, you know, kind of remove you from the situation. So, like, whether or not anyone's ever going to discover this deception, I don't know. I mean, because even Dolly, because I was wondering about, because Dolly was kind of like, that's not us. I guess because there's no dead enders working on their own anymore. It's just kind of like, it's a well-orchestrated machine now. So for them, it's that thing of like, she immediately knows, like, oh, we weren't part of this, that look on her face and everything. So I thought that was kind of fascinating. So, but for her, it's that situation, because there was a lady who was actually part of it, who Clive and Liv actually met with. I wonder, like, obviously Liv was pushing her trash can, like, would there have been some evidence? But they would have had no reason to even look at her. So it would make sense that someone on that list would be responsible for everything. I think they'll find out next episode, because obviously she's like, oh, if there's fake news up there, we got to let people know. But Dolly's like, no, because how are we going to let people know? It's like, oh, this is fake news. How do we know? Because we were the ones that faked things in the first place. So there's that whole situation. But she's like, oh, people have got to know. Obviously, you can tell she's getting her due to kind of put the lady down. I'm like, yeah, so we're probably going to find her body next week. In next week's episode or something. That's what I'm kind of thinking, because Dolly can't take any chance that she might ruin their operation. Like, the fact is, they've orchestrated this stuff. It's like, she doesn't need a lot of eyes on what they're doing. It's like, they have the luxury of anonymity, so doesn't want anyone kind of busting up her operation. So that's definitely going to be interesting. Like, that might kind of put them on the path of like, oh yeah, there's something larger at play here. So that's probably going, like, obviously that's probably going to, that case is probably going to be like an overarching thing. I'm curious, because it's probably going to be a situation of, because like so far, like, obviously everything's dealing with this whole situation. I'm sure the entire season is probably going to be based around that. Like, I'm curious about like murders and stuff like that. Like, is every case going to be connected to like the dead enders and whatnot? Or is there going to be more to it? Like, are there just going to be regular cases and this? Or I'm very curious to see kind of how that all ends up playing out. I should also note too, like, because I don't think the opening played at the beginning of the episode in the premiere. So obviously, like, I like that they always make little subtle changes to the opening, because I saw it this episode. Maybe it was just only on the CW app that the opening didn't play. It was like the shorter version, like the tail end of it, you know. But I like the addition of like the enemies and it being Blaine and Donnie like that. I thought that was kind of neat, because last season it was because they, like I said, they always just add new stuff. Like before, it was them adding, wasn't it Blaine's dad, I think, like as the prophet and stuff like that. And before that, it was adding Peyton as like, the best friend. So I just thought that was kind of neat. So just like the subtle things they've added over the course of the series, just to the intro like that, I thought was kind of pretty neat. That was just kind of where my mind was on that. So obviously the whole situation with Baron sucks. It's like, luckily they were able to rescue, you know, the girls, and you know, they made it to Seattle and everything, but on the outside there was that militia, and just, I think those were the same guys that dude that Dolly was talking to. He was like, oh yeah, my buddy, they got a patrol, they got arrows and stuff like that. I think that was the exact same group. That was, maybe Dolly had already gotten that started. I mean, I think he was saying that they were already kind of doing it anyway. And sadly, you know, Baron sacrificed himself so that the kids would be okay. I mean, to be fair, they're humans, but it still would have been like a whole complicated thing getting them inside. So, and you know, it's got to be hard for Liv too, because it's like, just their group is suffering losses. It's like she lost Baron now, like last season losing Levon. It's just, I mean, even before that too, losing the original Renegade, and now it's like it's hard. Like, luckily she's able to help Oliver and his foster sisters, but it's that thing of like, she ends up talking to Major about the fact is that she's like, I was living in your world, I just wasn't really, you know, kind of seeing, like, because she thought, you know, things kind of worked out. Like, what changed her mind about helping orchestrate this whole situation was the fact is that after losing Barrett, I guess it kind of made her realize, like, she was kind of hopeful, and it's like kind of saying like, oh, we don't need deception, but she sees like what went down with Barrett, and it's kind of like, yeah, things are bad, like we gotta do whatever we have to keep the peace, make sure that everything, you know, doesn't come crumbling down, you know. And we do see Oliver scratching his sisters. They had that whole point of like, oh yeah, we want to be zombies, can't wait to rip off someone's arm and stuff like that. I'm like, that seems very foreshadowing. That's probably going to turn into an issue, like him being old enough and wanting to be, he's sick and everything, sure, but the fact is that they're young, they probably might be a little bit more impulsive because they're teenagers and everything. So him being sick is one thing, but them doing what they're doing, I don't know. I feel like, because the fact is, obviously he's trying to do it when no one's looking, so I think when it's all said and done, that's going to be an issue going forward. It just seems like it. They might scratch someone, they might lose control, like, because it seems like they also want to become zombies for the wrong reasons. At least in Oliver's case, it's like, I'm sick, and this is a choice I'm making. To be fair, this is a choice they wanted to make, but to be fair, he didn't really probably weigh all the options for them potentially. I don't know. Maybe nothing will come from it. Maybe a lot will. Maybe a little. We'll ultimately have to, you know, wait and see where things go forward. I love Peyton was able to kind of get the funding for the iZombie. Also, so I love that Ravi and her did the whole thing that Liv was suggesting. I thought that was kind of neat. But also, she was able to do it by offering naming rights for Space Needle, and it's like, can you even do that? It's like, no. But she's like, I got maybe like 3 or 4 months before people find out that I'm a fake, and this basically ends up destroying my career. But she's willing to do this because it's like, we don't have much choice, because she's like, if things keep going the way they are, if we don't make a change now, because DC's just looking for an excuse to nuke Seattle, that if we don't make a change now, like, she doesn't think they'll survive the next 3 months. So things are definitely getting more and more interesting as we dive deeper into this season. I'm very excited to see where the next episode takes us with all of this. But really, that's all I want to talk about. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.